Hey guys, I'm Mike. I'm an author and an artist, and this is a video documenting my thought process and the design of the cover of my first novel, The Girl Who Can Cook, which will be out at the end of April 2018. The graphic right there is just a placeholder ink drawing that I did to use just as something on my to have on my website. So my first step was I wanted to take some reference photos. This is my lovely wife, and she was kind enough to indulge me. You'll see as some of the photos go, she gets more and more irritated. Because I'm like, change your shirt, do this, do that. I wasn't planning on using any of the photos of her. I just wanted to use them for reference. Uh, she's not even really necessarily built how I pictured the character in my head, but she's the same age and has the same scowl on her face, and she can do her hair up in a messy bun, so it was good enough. Because all these little details are part of the character. The story. It's a story about, just so we know, the fly over here is that a guy goes to work in the restaurant of the woman who killed his best friend in a domestic dispute, and he sets out to kill her, but as John Steinbeck said, the best laid plans. You're going to see me. I don't know if it's going to record the webcam as I sit now or if it used the webcam. The final video may have, you just may see me talking because I talked through this whole thing, but the video ended up being like an hour and a half. It's crazy that I spent an hour and a half designing my first. There are people that do this professionally, but I don't know. I don't like paying people to do things that I can do myself and that I feel like I can do well. So, I mean, I'm an illustrator. So I like this pose was the one that I selected. It's unnatural for her to have for a person to be holding a knife that's fanned out like this. But in the actual novel, there's this bit about looking at the picture of her on the website, and she's got she's leaning against an invisible wall and holding out her knife like it's time to get serious. You know how it is when you see these food shows. We watch Iron Chef or something, and then the chef crosses their arms when it's time to throw down, as if food is the most important thing. And I love to cook, but yeah, I had a lot of fun poking fun at the world of food in this book. Now, she does have a wedding ring. I caught that last second, even though I'm about to change this significantly. So my thought process here is I'm gonna get kind of a silhouette that I could use. I've got this iconic imagery that exists in the book, this picture of this chef that exists in the book, and I know that I want to block her face out in some way and show in some way, shape, or form that we're out to get this girl. But I don't want it to be too macabre. This is not, this isn't some, like, I kidnap someone and then I rape them and then I stab, it's not that kind of story. I mean, there's something wrong with that kind of story, but there's nothing wrong with that kind of story, if that makes sense. I mean, that book has its place and time, and those are every story is an important story to tell. But I'm not one for shock value in literature. I just want to tell. I'm trying to be entertaining and thought provoking, and I write commercial fiction, not literature. So I should have taken this into Photoshop and just done a refine edge and cleaned all this up. But I kind of like the little paintbrush strokes that get in there because I'm changing the values just a little bit to clean this thing up. And I'm also using the background as sort of an outline. And since that background isn't like a white, green screen or something that I could just key out, then you get a little silhouette that I know that when I'm going to take this and in some way low res it, I'm going to reduce the polygon count. Well, there aren't any polygons there, but I'm going to turn it into, these big blocky areas of color. And then I'm going to have some interesting changes. I'm not going to have to go in and add little bits of detail. It's going to change the silhouette slightly, that black outline that you see there, because it's just so inconsistent. And still at this point, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this picture of Kate. I do not want to have a novel with a photo on the cover, let alone a photo of my wife. I don't think that's going to be useful in any way. So I just like the silhouette. I took a bunch of reference photos. I like the silhouette. And what I planned to do was do something like this where I greatly reduce the count, and then I was going to blur it all out with some type of smudge tool, and then I was going to make it blue lines, print it out, and do an awesome ink drawing. But that's not what happened. So here I'm fiddling with the threshold. What that means is it's deciding which pixels are black and which pixels are white. So it's deciding where the cutoff value is. So if you were to put the threshold all the way up, it's going to make like even very light gray pixels are going to be black. You're going to get a big black mass. So you just slide that thing around. And I really wanted a sense of, since that t-shirt, the lines don't wander very much, I wanted it to be for sure a girl. If you see on the sides of where her breasts are, there's those little shadow spots. There you know that those are breasts, because you can barely see her hips. If I'm going to block the face out, I didn't want that to read as maybe a boy or maybe a girl. I mean, the arms pretty much give it away, but you don't know. It could have been a dude who played a lot of video games. And it does say the girl who can cook, but it's just that's what I was trying to figure out. So that black mass thing there is supposed to be a menu. You know, like you would see either the standing board on the sidewalk, and it doesn't really look that good. So here I'm just moving. I'm just trying to figure out a composition, because most novels are the titles are center justified. Not all. I mean, you could. I shouldn't say that. Book covers can look all over the place. What's important for me is that when this goes down to like 300 pixels, I want those words to be readable. I want, I'm an unknown or virtually unknown quantity as an author. And, we can't just put a swallow on the cover of my book and everyone is going to associate that with something, or a little mockingbird logo, and you don't have to read Suzanne Collins' name. Like, I need you to see my name, but have it be at the bottom. See, the more, like, if you look at Jonathan Franzen or Stephen King or some really popular authors, sometimes that name is enough to sell the book, or even celebrity books, things like that. You just put the name right across the top. So I'm leaving space. I want to leave space at the top for a blurb, even if it's this book is the greatest thing ever written, even though I haven't read it. Mom, I should do that. I really should. There's the original ink drawing. So still at this point, I figured that I'm going to do an ink drawing. Like, do some kind of, I really like the stripes on her shirt, and that she's, the character Erin that my wife is portraying there is always sloppily dressed and in a t-shirt and a messy bun with a pencil through her hair. And so I really think that the look is good. That's another problem with the ink drawing that I did. I sort of did it like a fashionista, and that just isn't consistent with the character. I was trying to preserve some of those, all that red there is like red ink that I splattered out, like a comic book. And I was trying to preserve that. It's so crazy to think that people did this before digital was a thing. Even if there's so many beautiful book covers that are made with physical objects, but you can still move those things around, zoom the photo in and out. Like it's very easy to make whoop, to take physical elements and photograph them or whatever, even when there's, actual physical objects like apples and stuff. Because it's very, like, you can draw shadows. I don't know, I can't think of a book offhand, but there's a lot of cookbooks have physical, food on the cover. And you could take just like a stock photo and then try and draw in that shadow, but it's not the same thing. It's easier it just looks so much better to take a picture and get its actual shadow. It takes a very deft hand to be able to paint. I mean, anyone can grab halfway to black and smear in a shadow that looks okay. And that might be fine for a building shadow in the background of a painting. But when it's some big featured real, hyper real object, color selection becomes everything. And I really got out of my comfort zone here. A lot of accidents happened bringing this cover together, and I'm pretty happy with it. I'm still fussing with composition. The gray has to go. The gray is too somber. It's just a gray with an airbrush in the background. A little 10-second background, just that didn't look horrible. It really didn't look right as a placeholder with just a gray background. But what I'm trying to do here is get all the elements in place, and then I can find some way to refine them. And I'm working in Manga Studio. There isn't any advantage in Manga Studio over Photoshop for what I did here. It's just that, I don't know. I pick one or the other. I like to Manga Studio is better for drawing. If I want a realistic looking drawing, then I prefer Manga Studio. But for painting and for all this photographic manipulation stuff, Photoshop's pretty much better. So I've got like a brush that's behaving a bit like a dry brush. What color is a pencil? Is a pencil yellow or is it orange? Or is it yellow orange? I don't know. You see, all the strokes are going the same direction, pretty much. Instead of rendering, you can kind of use stroke angle to render a little bit instead of using multiple colors or using a paintbrush or something to kind of tell which direction the light is coming. I like that at the center of her face is kind of blacked out. She's got a weird dimple in the corner of her mouth. In black and white like that. Or black and transparent. I guess that's just black and black. My phone's going crazy. See, to me, even if I had a really bright, like, red background, this doesn't have any pop. So now I've decided on the first one, I put the red over her eyes, like a snuff film. And I think that the red X is a lot more, I think even at 1,000 feet, you go, oh, you're going to kill her. Like, that's the story that it tells. There's so many, sometimes it's not, like, to me, bad book covers aren't the ones that look cheaply made or just, I would rather take a stock photo of a house in the woods if the book is about, in some way, if the title or the content itself somehow is connected to that stupid photo, than the most beautiful cover that tells me absolutely nothing about the book. Especially, like, I've gone very on the nose with the title. There was really no other way. And I don't want to, I mean, if anything, it's the inverse of the very journey into darkness. This is more a journey out of psychopathy than in it. So I know that there is a certain connotation when girl is in the title and a certain kitschiness, but I think that on the face of it, it seems on the nose and silly. But when you read the book, uh, hopefully, it's the opposite. Hopefully. So I got the lasso tool, and I've turned the layer opacity down a little bit, so the colors are all going to end up lighter. Uh, and I'm just filling with a macro, like I'm filling and deselecting with a macro. It's actually something that's like comic book buttons. And I have no idea what's really going to happen with the color. I mean, I have some idea, but I'm just kind of letting it go, and then I'll redo it where it doesn't look right. And this is very sloppy. What I intended for this to be was just sort of like the pop art version. But this is where the first accident happened with this cover. Now I have this layer going over the top rather than underneath, and that way it is coloring the ink underneath as well. So you can see my wife's wedding ring is clearly visible in the shot, which the character is not married, so that's a huge problem. But the thing is that 99% of what I just did there ends up in the final cover. I changed that layer, and I certainly cleaned it up a bunch, but that was just like it had the right. I didn't know that it had the right look. Even after I did it, I'm like, maybe we could do this as. I think I was gonna do it as a low polygon pop art piece, like take the inks out completely and just use that silhouette as a guide to create. Use the polyline tool to create semi-transparent blocks and build up a polygon-based. Does that make any sense? I wish I could draw it out, but you know art like it's like pop art. Do like a pop art version, but not with the inks underneath there. And there's something about the way that this thing, like when I start adding the other pieces, that I was like, oh, I should just leave it like this. So, first lesson here in your book covers, as you play around, even if you're playing traditionally, don't throw anything away. Notice that I have so many layers, I don't even have my layers named. A bunch of them are off. I keep turning things off. So what? So you have to dig through there to find your old ideas. But the cool thing is, every time I got lost or every time I didn't know exactly what to do, I would just click stuff on and off and see what I was thinking. So I really like that bottom part. I need to clean it up a little bit, but you can see my thumbprint. That's actual physical ink that's been turned white. As you could see in the H there, that was my thumbprint. At a certain point, I said, oh, I'm going to go print this out and I'm going to do this ink drawing. Ooh, I have no idea what that is. That would have worked too. A really blurred, like a San Francisco. So the book takes place in San Francisco, so I knew I wanted to put an element of San Francisco, and I had to figure out how to make this title thing there, the black and white thing, the menu, if you will, look like a menu, because it doesn't look like a menu. And I had to have it, when I had zoomed it out a whole bunch, it needed to read really well. I thought I stopped it here, I guess not. It's going to jump to a nearly completed version that looks a lot like this. And as far as color selection goes and opacity, like I'm just trying things out. I'm just trying to get maximum contrast because all that really matters is that you can read the title, which is in a white box by itself on black. Nothing. There's no more contrast than white and black. And then the rest of the elements, I'd like to be. See, when I shut the inks off, it's still red. Okay. I know I'm still trying to figure out what would look good. Here I'm just creating contrast so you can read the bottom part. So you can read my name. If I had blurred that out, it might have looked okay, but probably not. You know, like a dusty wall with light. Like if I had painted that to, like, you put bricks into the green. I think that's what I'm saying. And then you have like a light wash. See, I don't know how I just clearly didn't know this wasn't the way to go. Like, immediately this looks like trash. To my eye. But I set, this is why don't convince yourself what you're going to do before you do it. Like, I had it set in my mind that I'm going to do an ink drawing because that's what I'm best at. It's funny how you could take the same, you know, the inks of the girl. You could have that same thing, the same composition, and just in 10 minutes make it wildly different. I'm looking for pictures of something. I don't know what. I don't remember. I was looking at book covers. You know, crime book covers, especially books with blood in the title or something, they tend to be for very, very macabre stories. Cormac McCarthy, Blood Meridian, A Movable Feast. But the story, it's dark, it's darkly comic, but it's like, I don't know, In Bruges maybe would be the appropriate. There's not, but black comedy isn't really a genre for books. Book genres are strange. This would be shelved as a crime novel, but like in that movie In Bruges, Colin in the first, no spoilers, don't worry, but in the first like 10 seconds of the movie, he kills a little boy. And I don't remember that exactly. The movie's 10 years old. You can get over it if you haven't seen it. But like that's as terrible as a thing that can happen, just about, right? Killing a child. There's nothing worse. It's completely unforgivable, even if it's an accident. But that movie is really, really funny. It just is. You know, even though Voldemort is being like a horrible character, he's really, really funny. And you know, I'd rather make you laugh than make you gasp, I suppose. So I'm really trying to toe the line to like give the tonality of the book, like, oh, it's set in San Francisco and somebody's cooking and someone's going to die. Like, I'm trying to say that, but not be too dark about it, not like seem emo. It's a weird line to toe because you really want, even if it's after the fact, you want the book cover to make sense. Like, you want it to draw them in, you want them to be able to read it, but there should be a story on the book cover. If you don't know the author and you don't, like, if I had a big body of work, if I had written 20 novels, like, you can get way more artistic because there's already an implied tonality and an implied use of language and things like that. When I put my hands on my head like that, if you were watching the webcam a second ago, I'm probably making fun of myself. Okay, this is what I came up with. All I did, I used the same under weird pop art thing. I added some highlights. I made the knife more visible, and I turned it into a santoku. So there's like this moment in the book where the main character, who I wouldn't say is OCD, but he's always like changing her letters on the whiteboard in the restaurant, because he's a very neat person. He's kind of a clean freak. Not pathological, maybe. He's pathological in other ways. But so I wanted this to have a vague look, like it was marker on a whiteboard. So I wrote it out with a textured pen, and then I'm just going and kind of just painting in back and forth with black and white all the way on the top, because I know that I'm pretty much done. So, and I try to do things as non-destructively as possible. Like I could roll this back to any point in the last 30 minutes, and with just a few clicks. Like I just create layers and layers and layers. The only way that the reason you shouldn't do that is if it slows down your computer. And then I completely understand. Some people like that, and I'm the opposite when I'm painting. When I'm painting, I'll just merge down and merge down and merge down and just have one layer, like maybe one layer and then a background layer. So I'm just carving these out and trying to get a marker look, I suppose. Some type of handwritten look. I also went over the letters down there with that same digital pen just to get because it does repeat a little bit, even though it's a textured pen. And now I have to get her wedding ring out of here, and it's I got a little tripped up because I have the colors sitting on top of the inks, which is like just a bizarre thing for me. So I like some of the little areas, like where it doesn't overlap in the right spot and where there's nothing underneath. But I tried to clean it up in places where I thought it looked sloppy or unintentional. And then there's also that something gross happening between her, like in the middle of her chin. There's like, I'm not even completely sure how that happened. I guess it's the place. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't know. There's 3 pixels overlapping there that all look weird. The messiness in her hair is one thing, but I changed the X. This funky looking X is really a chisel tip Copic or Copic marker that I have. Not a physical marker, but like a digital. Like you can see it up on the top right there next to the window where it says Copics. I don't use them in real life. I mean, I have like a couple black ones and a couple gray ones for tone, but I don't use them with physical art. Most of my art is physical. It's probably why I fumble around digitally sometimes, because I'm so used to just editing things, editing finished works. I was thinking about using some type of smooth watercolor, like softening them up all the edges here. And that didn't look right to me. Here I'm just adding a bottom shadow so it looks three-dimensional, so you can tell that it's tilted backwards a little bit. All the changes I'm doing right now, like I know that I'm done. I'm just trying to improve readability, especially when it's zoomed out. And then in the background there, I have that I wanted something San Francisco, and I was just drawing with a silhouette brush, like you might do in character design or something like that. And I Googled Golden Gate and then I just slapped in some orange back there. And I pushed it a little bit red, and it really looked good. Even though it's just a bunch of shapes. It's not in perspective. It's not, I mean, it sort of is. But it looks pretty much like the Golden Gate, so I have to go back there and clean that up. Just to make sure that the arches are pointed in some direction and hope that there's some kind of a perspective going on. So here I'm just picking out little areas that when I zoomed out, I didn't like how they looked. You notice there was like a bit of gray at the top of her head, but I'm not trying to fix the messiness per se. Like, I sort of like that. That's part of the narrative. I want it to look messy, not sloppy. You know, messy is intentional. Sloppy is careless, to me. That's an Apple Watch that I hope reads more like a bracelet. You start fussing with things like this that you can't see, you're done. Like, there was no reason to fix these pixels. This is not going to have any effect on anything. I'm just trying to, when you start fussing with things that don't matter like this, it really just is an indication that either you aren't thinking, like you're not thinking through what needs to happen, or you're just going to overwork it and kill it. See, it's a super, super orange color that's just faded out. And adding those last bits of detail. Giving the bridge a bit of shape. That red is one errant fleck of ink from So now I'm shortening one side to say, hey, this thing is turned slightly inward. And look, you can see through the arches. That's just an illusion of detail. I'm not even looking at a photo of it. I have no idea if that would even be right, but it looks right. And that's all that matters. It looks believable. So, just going to make a couple color adjustments, and I'm sure I'll mess with it a little bit more, but I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think it looks pretty, it hits all those storytelling notes, and yeah, I hope I've given you some insight into cover design if you want to make your own. Or if you want me to make your book cover, I'm happy to do that too. And it doesn't cost $1 million. So as you can see, book cover takes a few hours. But yeah, thanks for watching. There's a link below to my website. Book will be out at the end of April. I hope everybody buys it in triplicate. Yeah, Finn. Thanks for watching, guys.